Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US elections special concerning itself mainly with one topic. I'll go off into a couple of different areas. I'm quite excited to talk about this. This stuff absolutely fascinates me. And just the difference in the two sides and how they go about doing things is absolutely stark. And it's incredible that the election is supposed to be as close as it is. I'm not all that convinced it is that as close as people are claiming. Now, I know the polls are showing a closeness, and I know some of the early voting data indicates that the Republicans are doing all right in a few places. Actually, Democrats are doing particularly well in Pennsylvania, and I think Pennsylvania might be, you've got a really good probability that's going to go to the Democrats, and that makes it very difficult for the Republicans to win the election. But a lot of the early voting data suggests that the people who are coming out to vote early are people who have previously voted in the last election. In other words, actually, it's not reflecting an enthusiasm to go out and vote for new people to come out and vote. For people, low information voters, low propensity voters, don't seem to have been mobilized. High propensity, high information voters may have been. And in that case, you've probably got a better chance of Democrats doing better as time goes on. But some of the data is really varied data in the early voting data sets that are coming out, and it's kind of changing in some places. North Carolina's on a knife edge, but then we talk about actually, does a registered Republican that goes out to vote, or 100 registered Republicans against 100 registered Democrats, are they going to vote Republican Democrat? And actually, we are seeing this huge number of Republican lawmakers and famous Republicans in these positions saying very publicly they're going to disavow Trump and vote for Harris and support the Harris ticket. And we're not seeing that happen the other way. I ran a little poll on my own channel, and there's a selection bias there, of course. But for that poll, it was 4 times as many registered Republicans were going to vote Democrat than registered Democrats vote Republican. And almost, it was, I think, 5 to 6 times as many, or 5 times as many, actually, when I last looked, 5 times as many independents were going to vote Democrat than Republican. So that means that even if it looks on a knife edge with early votes, I think it's so unrealistic that only famous Republicans would cross the aisle, and that wouldn't be reflected in rank and file. So I think the rank and file electorate, early voting, you will have, if you had 100 votes for each party, then actually, so 100 votes from each group of registered voters, that would still benefit the Democrats, and I think the independents would benefit the Democrats. That's just my speculation at the moment. And part of that speculation comes down to this. So when we're talking about enthusiasm, this is the sort of thing we are seeing at the present Harris rallies, where you've got Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen coming out, and you've got this kind of reception. Look at the size of that crowd. It's absolutely incredible. And the noise. So this means something. This isn't just pointless. It's not pointless of me including this, but in and of itself, it is not just a meaningless phenomenon. This represents something. There are people who are deeply enthused, and to think that this wouldn't be reflected in the voting seems rather bizarre. And when you go to look at the Republican rallies, there is nothing remotely similar to this kind of charged environment. I just think that's pretty incredible, and we can go on and watch as Obama sort of hands over to, so Obama was there as well, hands over to Kamala Harris.
Display it.
Now that sounds like a bit of a fervour there. It's a very loud crowd there. Now, okay, so what? Are these people going to vote? Well, you would assume all of those people there are going to vote, and all those people are going to be far more enthused to get out and tell their friends and family about this, about their excitement. These people are going to be evangelical about their voting intentions. So I think there's far greater chance of a contagion of excitement with the Democrats than with the Republicans at the moment. There have just been no rallies that look remotely like this. In fact, there have been complaints and there have been observations. CNN had it the other day where they were in the rally and they said, actually, one thing we've got to say is it's fairly empty behind us. There was an Arizona rally that was pretty empty yesterday, and that's not the case for the Democrats. So these are real life data points that need to be explained.
Just take a look, too, of this image 17 years apart.
So anyway, Brett Marcellus there goes on to talk about it. And actually the speeches there were pretty impressive from Kamala Harris and Obama, etc., etc. Anyway, we're going to come to that a bit later. Point being that there is an enthusiasm gap, I think, between the two. But where I want to take this now is, am I just sitting here trashing Trump? Well, I am, but I'm doing that because A, this is the most important election ever, and B, because it warrants it. Because actually, I think he's unstable, and he's clearly not from an objective point of view. Like if I was Trump's advisor now, I'd be like, dude, you're doing the wrong things to try and attract the people that you need. Like I've told you before, there's the defense. I need all my core voters to vote for me, every single one of them. I need as many one of those people to be as enthused as possible to get off the sofa. This is not about undecided between one party or the other. This is undecided about whether I get off my arse and vote or not. So I need all of those people to go out and vote for me. And then the offensive is I need the independents, the undecideds out here, and some people from the other party to vote for me so that I can get over 50%. Otherwise, there's a hard ceiling of sort of 46, 47% for Trump. And if he's not attractive enough to others, he will not win the election. Full stop. The same for, obviously, for Harris. But what she's doing is strategically positioning her agenda, her party, her rallies in a way that attracts the middle ground and attracts the Republicans. She stood up with 100 Republicans on the stage the other day to say, and also said, I will put a Republican in the cabinet, in the administration, to say, I am giving you a permission structure to vote for me as a Republican. There is over here a whole host of famous Republicans endorsing me. This gives you, the rank and file, permission to do so. Actually, something I was going to show you at the end, I think, plays into this idea that it's not just happening in permission structure. I think is a word that's really useful to explain what's going on here. The people you don't get this in the UK. In the UK, we are not like we don't have registered party affiliation. You can join a political party. It's slightly different from registering. In the US, it seems that you often get this idea. Not all states do this, but you register as a Democrat, an independent, Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, and that you kind of. I have a problem with this because you're basically just giving it a barrier to getting out of that going forward. You're labeling yourself in an identitarian manner. So you're saying, I am a Republican rather than I am going to vote for the Republican Party. It's like saying I am Labour in the UK, or I am Tory, rather than I'm going to vote for Labour or I'm going to vote for the Conservatives. I am not a thing that is identified by this. I'm a human being who might vote this way or might vote that way. If you identify yourself as I am a Labour, right, then you are locking yourself into that worldview, and you're far less likely to be able to come out of it to say, actually, I'm going to vote Conservative. I can't do that because I am a Labour, right? So in the US, I am a registered Republican, which means it's very difficult. It's more difficult for you to go and vote Democrat because actually, there's going to be all sorts of psychological things going on that is going to stop you from jumping outside of your kind of formal identity. You're registered as a Republican or registered as a Democrat. I just think that's highly problematic. I would scrap that whole thing, because it just presents a barrier. Anyway, what that means is you hear this term all the time. It means that often there is a need for a permission structure. You need a permission to leave that identity, to leave that tribe, to leave that family, to leave that community, to go and vote for the other side. And so what Kamala Harris is doing really well, I think, is and you could say she's leaving behind the far left, the progressives, but actually here I think that's a calculation worth making. And she is saying, right, we need to give a permission structure for as many Republicans to come over to the Democrats as possible. Now, what this woman here is talking about is taking that idea and applying it to just women voters, although she does mention men a little later. This is fascinating.
This is like a whisper campaign. So sometimes you go into bathrooms and there's a thing about if you're trafficked or if you've been abused. So this is a campaign to put these Post-it notes in the bathrooms, giving women the permission to vote for who they want to. So it says nobody knows who you vote for. So vote for who you want, or vote Harris for women's rights.
And where do you put these?
Airports, truck stations, restaurants.
How many of these have you made?
We've made thousands and thousands. Sometimes you go to doors and the husband doesn't let the wife come to the door. Oh, we're Republican here. Well, it doesn't have to be Republican. Women can...
That's the point. We're Republican here. This house is a Republican house. I would never say that. This house is a house, and I am someone who usually votes this way, but I'm not going to ring fence my ability to, I'm not going to ring fence my vote. I have the ability to change my mind. This is a free thinking house, if anything. But that doesn't seem to be the case as much in the US.
Vote 2024.
Do you know who came up with this?
No, I saw it online, and all the women in my area, they're all doing it. They're literally driving up to Wisconsin to the truck stops just to do this. They're even putting them in the men's bathrooms, also saying no one will know who you vote for. Vote Harris for your daughter's rights. This is like a whisper campaign. That
is giving a permission structure, saying, look, no one's going to know. Liz Cheney did this the other night in a town hall. She said, she's speaking to women about bodily autonomy, which is fascinating coming from a pro-lifer like that, saying no one knows who you're going to vote for. No one knows who you vote for. It is a private thing. It's a secret thing. You do it in the voting booth. You vote for who your conscience tells you. This is what this woman's done. I think it's absolutely fascinating. So anyway, before we get on to how to answer questions in a way that gives, hopefully, solace to those who are wanting granular detail and actual, knowledge about certain topics. Again, we're going to go back to, really, this guy is who you're voting for?
As many as you have no idea what I did in the White House. I stopped wars with France. France, you know the France story? They were going to charge us, think of this, 25% to all America. I have to protect American companies, whether we like them or not. Some of them I didn't even like. Google is treating us much better. Do you notice that?
He's jumping around and he's talking about I stopped wars with France. And then he starts talking about some kind of trade thing, 25%. I have no idea. Like, the people in that audience almost certainly will have no idea what he's talking about. There's a lack of coherence, a lack of ability to string thoughts together. And also, I presume he's not really talking about France. I stopped wars with France. Like, really? Unless it's some kind of trade war, but even then, like, what are you talking about? But there's no clarity, and perhaps you're just getting it just plain old wrong. Here we've got him getting it wrong again.
Brian, it's all coming through Iran, and Obama he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't even mention them in his statements. It's all coming through Iran.
Well, you mean President Biden. So,
even I presume this is the Fox host having to correct him. It's not Obama. You're not running against Obama, and he keeps doing this. He calls Biden Obama, then Nikki Haley is Pelosi, and then all of these different people. He's just always confusing. Yet, had that happened with Biden, you would have gone mental. He is not judged on the same thing, and this is something we're going to come to later. Really interesting observation by a few people, Jake Tapper, Van Jones, like really on point. So again, there's this one here that he just gets wrong.
Terminated so fast. Alaska. But we will quickly become energy dependent again. We weren't energy terminated.
I don't know whether he goes on to correct that, but, we will become energy dependent again. He means independent. And by the way, you are energy independent. Literally, the US is producing more energy than it ever has done. So again, just slip up after slip up after slip up. And yet, had that been Biden or Harris, would he be excoriated by the right? But no, he gets a free pass. So if you're a Trump supporter, how do you explain all this? Honestly, ask yourself, had this been something that Biden had said, how would you have reacted? Honestly, do you hold Biden to a different metric or hold him to account more than you do your own Trump? Is that fair? Are you being horrendously biased? So on and so forth. Now, this is an ad that is, I don't know who it's for, who it's paid for by, but it kind of goes to this, the kind of either the lack of coherence and kind of gibbering thoughts that he has, or just the extreme topics that he deals with. It's a bit like your crazy old uncle old grandfather, as he's getting a little bit mad, starts to become more extreme and gibber nonsensically. And this advert rolls with it. But the idea for me is that he gives ammunition to comedic interpretations of him that are on point. And, is that really who you want running the country?
We were so worried.
They're eating the dogs.
He wasn't making any sense.
The people come in. They're eating the cats.
And he just kept getting worse.
They did dumps. That's what they call them, dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Gross.
In Michigan and Pennsylvania. All over.
We had to do something.
They will take the life of the child in the 9th month. Even after birth, they'll execute the baby.
You sound crazy right now. Then a friend told us there was somewhere he could get the help he so desperately needed, called A Place for Trump.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
Now
That's a reference to, he said he aced his test that he did some time ago. And of course, it was a dementia test where you're only supposed to say 5 things and then remember that later. And he said, look, I can remember them, as if like, well done. That's like the sort of thing you get, well, whatever. That's the reference there.
he has round-the-clock support and can enjoy the things he loves, like eating cheeseburgers and rage posting at 3 a.m.
I know windmills very much, and they're driving the whales, I think, a little batty.
Sure. So this November, let's vote to put him in A Place for Trump, because we all know he belongs in a home, just not this one.
I have concepts of a plan.
Of course you do.
Paid for by Eric Smallwell. I just saw that at the end. I hadn't seen that before. Wow. So yeah, there you go, Eric Smallwell. That is so very good, very good. But if your talks are involving these talking points that end up being able to be used so easily comedically against you, I think it says something. Now, before we go on to the how do you answer town hall questions part of this, which is actually the main part of this. These are kind of preamble points. It's quite often more important, I think, to rather than to ask what someone says, it's almost more illuminating to ask why they said it. Now, Trump does an awful lot of saying stuff like this. And the reason he says stuff like this is because he is as some people say, a malignant narcissist, or has narcissistic personality disorder. So, the Greek myth of Narcissus, who looks in the pond and sees a reflection of himself and falls in love with himself. So that is narcissism, is like you are just completely absorbed with yourself and how you look, how you are, getting gratification, validation, and adulation from everyone. That's what defines or characterizes your behavior. So the question is, if that is a thing, if that is truly what's going on with him, then is he the right person to have in the White House, in charge of the country? Are the decisions he is going to make going to benefit you, the people, You, the voter, if you're an American voter out there, do you think he will do things for your benefit or for his benefit? Do you think Kamala Harris will do things for your benefit or for her benefit more than him? Who has the better track record for looking after others rather than themselves? Honestly, like she was a prosecutor prosecuting on behalf of, she was serving. She is a servant leader. Lots of people talk about this, and you can look back. You can get all religious about this and talk about, Jesus being a servant king type thing. Like that's a theme of the theology of the Bible. I'm saying that from a non-religious point of view. That is okay. That's a really interesting form of leadership. The servant king. Like, I am serving you. I'm the most powerful person here, but I'm using that power to serve you and not to self-aggrandize. Is he a servant king? And is she a servant king? So when Pete Buttigieg has talked about this before quite a lot, that actually, when you look at Kamala Harris, when you look all throughout her career, she's been serving others. Like, it's all about doing work on behalf of the country or other people. As a senator, but prior to that, DA, AG, DA, whatever, in law, prosecutor, in order to prosecute cases on behalf of other people. It's not about her own power, and she's not doing things for her. Of course, there's going to be elements of that with everybody. Like, no one's completely altruistic. But for Trump, I'd say everything is about him. He still fondly remembers his time on The Apprentice as being like the most important achievement of his life, because he was there sort of sitting on a throne, being that quasi-dictator. That's what he wants to be. He's those hot mic moments where he talks about, well, Kim Jong-un, his people stand up straight back for him. I want them to do that for me. That's what he wants. He wants that sense of power. So then when we look at, that's the thesis, right? And then you look at data points, you see, again, I've talked to you about abductive reasoning before, inference to the best explanation. So what best explains any data point? And here we're going to put it into two pots, simplistically, binary option of like, he's a servant king or he's a narcissistic dictator wannabe type thing, an authoritarian narcissist. Okay, those are our two options. And of course, there might well be more, but the spectrum in between, etc., etc. Let's look at this and think, well, is this your narcissist or is this your servant king?
Oh, there it is. I was looking at me. I started looking at
There is down in the corner there. If you can see him at the bottom right of the, my face is probably in the way, but he's at the bottom right of that. That's him on the stage, and this is a massive screen behind him, and there's a massive picture of him there. That is what he's talking about. Oh, I'm looking at me. So that gives you the sense of what's going on.
There it is. I was looking at me. I started looking at me, and I'm looking. I don't like my hair tonight.
I do not like the word. So, again, struggling with words even then. So, okay, you're taking time out then to kind of think about how you look. It's all about you. Here, Adam Kinzinger's absolutely on point with this. What a narcissistic teabag. So what's he talking about? Interesting. So it's the little things. And I love the little things. I always talk to you about, look at the little things. It tells you so much about people, doesn't it? So this is a picture of Trump, right? With some people, I presume, that did these podcasts or something. I don't know. Anyway, here he is. And he's got his phone on the table just in front of him, having just used it. And the screensaver is still on. And the interesting thing here is that is his screensaver on his phone. Of course, Trump's cell phone lock screen background image is a picture of himself, not his wife, not his children, not his grandchildren, himself. There you go. And again, so that data point, what does that better support? Is that the servant king? Does he have the American flag or the White House or some kind of reference to something abstract about liberty, or I don't know, something that would underwrite your rulership, your tenet of your guiding principle? Is it going to be people that mean a lot to you? No, it's you. It's you saying you're fired. Absolutely incredible. Now, this again, all these data points, which thesis does it better support? Servant king or narcissistic authoritarian? And this is a town hall with JD Vance where Trump calls into the town hall to ask JD Vance a question. Absolutely incredible.
We have a call right now from former President Donald John Trump. He wants to weigh in. Mr. President, I know there's a little bit of a delay. Can you hear us? And what is your question for the senator?
Well, I can hear you, Chris, and I do have a question, and I think it'll be quite an interesting one. The answer should be easy. How brilliant is Donald J. Trump?
They laugh at that. That's really funny. I don't think that's funny. I actually, honestly, like, imagine that Biden had done that with Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris had done that with Tim Walz. It's cringe. It really is deeply cringe. These guys are laughing, haha, politely type thing. Oh, Trump, he's such a joker. That tells you virtually everything you need to know. When I get excited about doing videos like this, it's because I really get excited about making connections all the time. I think everything I do with my videos is about making connections. When I do my Ukraine war videos and I'm saying, right, we've got this data point, we've got this data point, we've got this data point. What thesis does this better support? Who's doing better? What's the situation on the front lines? And it's about making these connections to find out if we have an accurate representation of reality. I'm spitballing here, but I realise why I get excited about things, and it is making the connections. And for me, like, this is so illuminating. This is so illuminating. It actually. I've literally got goosebumps, like a bit of a shiver down my spine, because like there is an enlightenment revelation here for certainly for me. I mean, I know this already, but this is like so clear.
I do have a question, and I think it'll be quite an interesting one. The answer should be easy. How brilliant is Donald J. Trump?
By the way, I hadn't noticed that before. That switch over to those women just sitting there, absolutely diamond. Look how unimpressed. As I would be. It's like,
Take your time. Think about it.
Well, first of all, sir, this is supposed to be undecided voters. I would hope that I have your vote, of all people. But here's first of all, sir, of course, you're very brilliant, and we
How do you answer that? How do you actually, I feel sorry for JD Vance there, because actually that's such a crass question that how do I answer it without sounding obsequious and paying fealty and like groveling at the feet of a throne? That puts JD Vance in an awful position, because it makes JD Vance look weak, or looks in that way, but like a groveling almost worm or something. But funnily enough, that's exactly what Trump wants. So Trump wants fealty. He wants absolute loyalty. And here's someone, this is potentially really clever actually of Trump in a very cynical, this is not a good way of attracting voters. It is like very bad. But in a sense of, if Trump's intention was to get someone who had previously, some years back, absolutely slagged them off and called them this Hitlerian Nazi type thing, fascist, which is what he said which is what JD Vance said in 2016 era and onwards. This is brilliant. Like, on national television, you are now going to say how brilliant I am.
But Here's first of all, sir, of course, you're very brilliant, and we both agree. We both agree that it's important to have very smart people running our government. But here's,
we have a call.
And yeah, I just found that absolutely fascinating. Right, what we're going to do now is look at a couple of answers that Trump has given in some town halls to give a sense of what's going on in his mind, whether he's the right person to run the country. Let's compare how people answer questions.
Let's go.
And by the way, he had just called this person who's called Sage. That's her name, the woman who's comparing here. He had called her Paige already, so he got her name wrong. Again, a bit of a problem.
First, I want to just give you a quick rundown. I mean, this is going to be, Mr. President, he is as organic as it gets, right? So we are going to go everywhere tonight on all different kinds of topics. You may notice there's no teleprompter. Not necessary. We don't need that here. I'm just saying. So we have questions from the audience. We also have questions from a few of the lovely people behind me as well. We're going to go back and forth and take turns. So are you ready for this town hall? Let's go. The first question is someone I believe who is behind me. So you're going to have to tell me. I didn't get to meet you all. Bob, where are you? Hi, Bob. Here we go.
Hi, Bob. Ooh.
Come on up.
I like that outfit. Oh, that's beautiful. Where did you buy that? I want to get one of them. Okay. That's pretty cool, actually.
Can you help him out with an outfit?
Absolutely.
And again, already we haven't even heard the question, and he's kind of distracting here. And I think Trump is uncomfortable in town halls, and I think there is a sense that deep down he doesn't really know what he's talking about. He doesn't have a great depth of knowledge about how to run a country. He doesn't have a great depth of knowledge of the economy or foreign policy. He talks very simply in transactional terms, even with the economy, even with foreign policy, like all about this person's strong, we're weak, strong, weak, give, take, zero-sum game, etc., etc. That seems to be the way that he interprets everything.
Absolutely. I got just your size. Mr. President, I start the afternoon off. My name is Bob. I'm a retired union worker from Hazleton on a fixed income. Many Americans in my position struggle to make ends meet. Will you commit to helping protect Social Security and Medicare benefits?
A great question. The answer is yes. And when you say fixed income, because of Biden and Kamala, nobody knows her as Harris. I can't use the word Harris. And by the way...
So straight away, he's not answering the question. I mean, he just say yes. Basically, you could say his greatest answer to this question is the very first word, yes. But he doesn't talk about that. He doesn't talk about, Medicare and Social Security there. He goes off to just slag off Kamala Harris and then just goes off on a massive tangent.
Nobody knows her as Harris. I can't use the word Harris. And by the way, it's her 60th birthday, so I want to wish her a happy 60th birthday. Right? No, happy birthday. And many more, and I mean it, so, I do mean it, actually. I'm just looking at this gentleman. You don't look like you're retired to me. You look like you're in the prime. You could be if you wanted to be, right? You're doing
I'm
great.
trying.
Look at the size of the arms of this guy. I don't know. He looks pretty healthy. So people on fixed income have been decimated by the Biden and Harris regime. This has been horrible what's happened to them, because we have, I think in the greatest in history, they say no, it's 48 years. But I think we had the greatest inflation just about in the history of our country. They don't include everything. They don't include interest rates going from 2% to 10, but you can't get the money at 10, so therefore it's much higher. But people...
I am lost. He's talking about inflation. Instead of saying inflation's too high at the moment, it's really high. In fact, it's down to a pretty decent level. But of course, that's difficult for him to admit. So he's going to go with the everything's too expensive, inflation's terrible. But he's doing it in a way that is just completely lacking clarity. And he's going around the freaking houses. He needs a teleprompter. She's just talking, oh, it's wonderful we don't have a teleprompter. My goodness, that man needs one.
The people that are hurt the most are people on fixed income, like Bob. And we're going to do a lot of things. For one thing, no tax on Social Security benefits for seniors. Are you getting Social Security? You don't look. What is your age?
57.
You look a lot younger than that. Doesn't he look handsome?
So he's smuggled in a no tax on Social Security. That's what he should be focusing on and explaining and communicating to the audience, because that's what he's selling. That should be his platform. Like, that's a central component part to his answer. But I don't think he knows enough about what that entails or what it means or what the ramifications are to be able to give a decent, instructive opinion on that. And so he prefers to talk about how wonderful this guy looks and stuff that's completely irrelevant. So just bear that in mind. Like that, this is how not to answer at a town hall in a way that's going to move the middle. It's going to steal some people over from the Democrats. Like, these are elements of the welfare system or the economy that you need to be selling to potential voters. You don't want to be saying frivolous stuff about the way this guy, how healthy this guy's arms look.
And we're going to do a lot of things. For one thing, no tax on,
okay,
on
that.
Social Security.
Talk about that.
Benefits
Talk about
seniors.
that.
Are you getting Social Security? You don't look. You're.
Oh, okay.
What is your age?
57.
You look a lot younger than that. Doesn't he look handsome? He's a much better looking guy than I am, and look at him. You look good, and you have a good family, great family.
I've got a great family.
That's great. So you were hurt, though, because of the inflation. I mean, people were hurt because of the inflation, and especially the people that are in fixed income. And here's what...
It's the way that he phrases things, like, you were hurt because of the inflation. Using the definite article there, the, instead of just, you were hurt because of inflation. The inflation. It's almost like... It's a simplistic way. It's like almost a childish way of speaking. I don't know. There's something about that phraseology there that I think it troubles me. Anyway,
we're doing, number one, no tax on Social Security for our seniors. That's a big deal. No tax on tips, also, as you know, and no tax for all different groups we're covering, right? And no tax on tips, and then he doesn't know. No tax for all groups that we're covering. What are you talking about? Tax on what? Like no one's paying tax on all groups of people not paying tax. And what's this got to do with Medicare? On overtime. So if you work overtime, that's been the big.
And by the way, previously Trump had said that he refused to pay overtime. He slagged off overtime. And I think he's had his knuckles wrapped about that because he wants to be appealing to people who are working really hard, doing overtime to pay their bills. It's just, yeah. So it's worth knowing about that.
Sleeper. And another good one, I think something that's going to be really good is you can fully deduct your interest payments when you buy a car. We never did that. And a Wall Street genius called me up. He said, whose idea was that? It sounds pretty simple, right? But we've never done that. So you buy a car, you're going to be able to fully...
And of course, this has nothing to do with really... I mean, it's only tangentially applied, I think, to particularly the Medicare stuff. Interesting, again, the way he frames stuff. So everything has to be... Like, this goes back to the narcissism thing. Everything has to be about how he's wonderful. So this is a Wall Street... person phoned him up and said, who thought about this amazing thing? It's me. I'm just amazing. I thought about this myself. It's just no one's thought about it before. No one. I'm the first person who's ever thought about this. I'm amazing.
And a Wall Street genius called me up. He said, whose idea was that? It sounds pretty simple, right? But we've never done that. So you buy a car, you're going to be able to fully deduct your interest payment. That's a big deal. So you go out and buy a car. So we're going to do that for you. Also, that's a big thing. Also, very importantly, we're just going to make the economy better. Do you plan on working a little bit in terms of part-time jobs or any of that?
Yes, sir, I still do.
But one of the biggest things we're going to do is the economy is going to get good, but we have more liquid gold. This is what caused the inflation. We had the best, we were energy independent. First time, I think, ever. We're energy independent, and now we're getting oil from Venezuela. We're getting tar from Venezuela because it comes out as tar. We have to heat the hell out of it. And it's done. There's only one place in the whole world that can do it.
He's asked about Medicaid and fixed incomes. Okay, this is weirdly connected to making the economy better in some kind of generic, vague way.
And that's in Houston, Texas. So for the environmental people, that stuff is going up in smoke in our territory. And we have the best, cleanest, the most oil and gas of any country in the world, including Saudi Arabia, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, all of them. And we're going to be using it. But here's the thing. We will get your energy bill, everybody in the audience, including businesses, down by 50% from 1 year from when we take office. And when that happens, everything else is going to follow. So...
Wow, because that's a massive call. And I would like to know how you're going to do that, because that sounds like we're going to give you a moon on a stick. Reduction in energy bills, and to put a number on that of 50% is something that you can be held to. I think that's incredibly risky, and that's a massive call.
Sage, it was energy that caused, Bob, it was energy that caused the problem. And it's going to be energy that leads us back into the promised land. The energy went up, and also their spending, their stupid spending. They spend money on the Green New scam at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They just like they could have thrown it out the window. It would have been fine. So, and thank you for doing.
Which they're not. I mean, he's just mischaracterizing all sorts of different things there. But I chose this answer because this is, funnily enough, one of the most information-dense answers that he has given, right? And yet it's all still so problematic because it doesn't quite go to what he's really asking about. And yet this is like one of the best I can find.
This is great to have you. I've seen so many great stories about this woman. She's a brave woman, a great woman. Beautiful too, but I'm not allowed to say that. That could be the end of your political...
And it just, then he just goes off on one there. So, that's one answer that he's given, which I think, indicates some real problems in the way that he frames things, or the way he doesn't quite answer what he really should be answering. And you could probably come away from that thinking, oh, he's going to do loads of stuff. But actually, what's he doing for someone on fixed income with regard to things like Medicare and so on and so forth? Okay, here's another question in the town hall that is a bit of a different question, actually.
What is the plan to do about the food healthcare industry and getting the artificial foods banned in our urban communities that have less access to organic whole foods?
So, Bobby Kennedy, right? Everybody likes Bobby. And he's so big into the health food and women, things, everything. He wants to do things in the environment.
He's big into healthcare, women, things, everything. And he's big on the environment. What are you going to do about artificial foods and healthier foods in our communities, etc., etc.?
And he endorsed me. First time a Kennedy's ever endorsed a Republican. Maybe it's going to be the last, but I doubt it. And he's a great guy. He would be so perfect. He doesn't like artificial foods, and he doesn't like pesticides and all the stuff they put on them. And if you listen to him for 10 minutes, I mean, he says other countries that don't do anything are healthier than us, okay? We're not that healthy, to put it mildly. So no artificial foods. We don't want artificial. We have plenty of food. The food isn't our problem. And our farmers are great. And our farmers aren't allowed to do their job. Our farmers did great.
So you can be forgiven, I guess, for thinking he's answering the question here because there are words coming out of his mouth. But he's not. What are you going to do? And his answer is basically RFK. Yeah, but what are you going to do? What's your agenda? What's your policy? What are your thoughts about this? Our farmers are great. RFK doesn't like pesticides. Yeah, but are you going to ban pesticides? Like, what are you going to do about, artificial foods and issues with healthy food?
4 years ago, they were doing just about the best they've ever done. They're not doing well at all now. We're not going to have
not answering.
Foods. We don't want artificial foods.
We are not going to have artificial foods. Are you bonkers? So that is not true. You are not going to come into government and then say, by the way, America's not going to have artificial food. What do you mean by artificial food? Like, you're just saying stuff here. And this is what I mean by just, he does, I don't think he has a clue. And this is what happens when you don't have a clue about a subject. And you don't get briefed on subjects. Like, you don't have aides around you saying, by the way, if you asked about this is what you want to say. And if you asked about this is what you want to say. This is what happens if you just waltz through saying, hey, I'm just gonna wing it. Yeah, but do you know what our policy on like food and farming is? Yeah, farmers were great. They used to be much greater. When I was in charge, farmers were greatest. Now they're not so great. And RFK knows a lot about food. So that's cool, isn't it? I can say that.
Healthy foods. And a lot of things are going to be going. And I'll tell you, I'm going to have Bobby Kennedy involved in it. He's a great guy.
A lot of things are going to be going. What does that mean? A lot of things are going to be going, and Bobby Kennedy's going to be involved in it because he's a great guy. He's a great guy. So that's good.
And even the way when I mentioned his name, all you guys, and you're tough cookies. You wouldn't think, sometimes you'd say, maybe you wouldn't like a guy like Bobby, but
You've lost him.
A person that talks more about food and health than anything else. So I think that's cool. So we'll get it taken care of.
We'll get it taken care of. What? Get what taken care of? Like, to be honest, the question wasn't clear enough, and it was pretty vague. But your answer has given nothing other than RFK, get rid of all artificial foods, and we'll take care of it, without really clarifying what it actually is.
You'll be healthier in 4 years from now than you are now, and you look very healthy.
And he does this all the time. He just makes these blanket promises. You'll be healthier. You'll have your bills will be down 50%. Your energy bills will be down 50%. How does that exactly work? Drill. Yeah, but at the moment, the US is producing more hydrocarbons than it ever has done in the history of any country in the history of the Earth. Right? So what are you going to do to reduce those bills by 50%? Because you can't just say you're going to produce more oil. And here you can't just say you're going to be healthier in 4 years' time because RFK Jr. and we're going to get rid of artificial foods. So what I'm trying to do here is express to you that this man can't answer questions coherently, and he doesn't have a grasp on the requisite information that's needed to answer these questions. Trump on Fox and friends. So here we've got another one.
We have here in the Bronx. What are we going to do?
They're failing.
What are we going to do to improve that in our school systems?
Well, we're moving them back from Washington, where you have people that don't care about New York, frankly. You know, in Washington, I don't know if you ever noticed.
So talking about school systems and improving how to fix schools in the Bronx. So this is the same context, same barbershop, same guy. What are you going to do to fix the school systems in the Bronx? Like, that's a very education-based question about what are you going to do with education policy or education funding or improving standards. How are you going to measure standards, and how are you strive to improve those standards?
Here in the Bronx, what are we going to do?
They're failing.
What are we going to do to improve that in our school systems?
What are we going to do to improve that?
Washington, where you have people that don't care about New York, frankly. You know, in Washington, I don't know if you ever noticed, you go Department of Education. You got half the buildings in Department of Education. I never saw. You don't need any of them. You know, I want one person and a secretary to just make sure they're teaching English, okay? Give it a little.
By the way, these guys look really unimpressed.
English, okay? I say reading, writing, and arithmetic. No transgender, no operations. You know, they take your kid. There are some places your boy leaves.
And this is it. So it's like, I've been asked something about education. I don't know enough about education because I don't listen to my freaking aides. And I don't try and improve my knowledge about anything. I just think I can swan through this freaking election just speaking absolute bollocks. And I'm going to pivot. You've asked me about how I'm going to improve schools. And what was my answer? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Freaking hell, mate. Jesus. That's not an answer, right? And then you go, and do you know what? And here he goes on the old transgender, that you can bring your kid into school and it comes back a different gender that day. And that is a lie. That is a downright lie. There is no school where that has ever been the case. Don't listen to this BS. And even if you're vehemently anti-trans people or whatever, or, you know, whatever your position is, don't for a second think that you can take your kid to a school one day and that same day you go to pick your kid up and it's a different gender. Don't for a second think that that's any element of the reality of the United States, because it is not. That is a lie, and this is a pivot to try and get onto culture wars stuff instead of staying on target.
So school comes back a girl, okay, without parental
It's not
consent.
true. Not true.
What's that all about? That's when they talk about a threat to democracy, they're a threat. Could you imagine without parental consent? At first, when I was told that was actually happening, I said, you know, it's an exaggeration. No, it happens. It happens. There are areas where it happens. We're not going to let it happen.
What about improving the schools in the Bronx? Incredible. As Dana Goldberg here says, Jesus Christ, listen, if you drop your kid off a boy and he comes back a girl, take the child back to school because you took home the wrong kid. Right, enough of this BS. Teachers can't give your kid an Advil without parental consent. You can't even give a headache tablet. Like, my wife does that work. I'm not married. My partner does that kind of work in the school. She's a business manager in a school, but she manages the school's like office and everything. And you can't even give paracetamol without like parental consent. Right? You can't give Calpol without parental consent. So giving them a gender changing operation is not something that you can do to a kid in a single day. It just is so frustrating. And then, to get a sense of the kind of rhetoric that we're getting at these rallies, let's listen to Tucker Carlson just go nuts.
If you allow your 14-year-old to light a joint at the breakfast table, if you allow your hormone-addled 15-year-old daughter to slam the door of her bedroom and give you the finger, you're going to get more of it. And those kids are going to wind up in rehab. It's not good for you, and it's not good for them. No. There has to be a point at which dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. Dad comes home. And he's pissed. Dad is pissed. He's not vengeful. He loves his children. Disobedient as they may be, he loves them. Because they're his children, they live in his house. But he's very disappointed in their behavior. And he's going to have to let them know. He's going to have to get to your room right now and think about what you did. And when dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now. And no, it's not going to hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it's not. I'm not going to lie. This is going to hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. And you earned this. You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl.
Jesus wept. This is a political campaign rally.
And it has to be this way. It has to be this way because it's true. And you're only going to get better when you take responsibility for what you did. That's not said in the spirit of hate. It's not said in the spirit of vengeance or bigotry. Far from it. It's said in the spirit of justice, which is the purest and best thing there is.
Advocating for vigorous spanking that is going to hurt you a lot of a young girl. Like, irrespective of your position on discipline at home or whatever, it's also a weird thing to be talking about at a rally for essentially for the president there. So then what we're going to do is just look at Kamala Harris and see what she's like at answering questions.
Seeing the opportunity of this moment and investing in it. I'll tell you, and I know this is
in a town hall
topic for many of us. I love Gen Z. Because we have
the old
Gen
laughing
Zs
Kamala Harris. Okay.
We have kids who are Gen Zs. It can be complicated. I know. I love Gen Z. These young leaders are they're clear-eyed. They've only known the climate crisis. They've only known active shooter drills. I mean, we had fire drills, not our kids, right? But they also, they're so wonderfully impatient. Right? No, really, that's good. That's good. They're ready to get in there. Let's invest in them. So, for example, one piece of my opportunity economy is we got to deal with the reality of where we are right now.
So, and this is where she goes into detail of policy and whatnot. But you might laugh at that and think, oh, she's laughing and she's saying overly nice things about Gen Z. And what she's saying is I appreciate young people and they're important, they're impatient, and that's a good thing. And we're going to empower them to use that impatience. So and to bet themselves and to have high aspirations. And this is her way into talking about serious stuff here.
The American dream for previous generations was something that people could kind of count on. Not so much anymore in terms of home ownership. We have a housing shortage in America. We have a supply shortage. So part of my plan is, hey, let's be clear-eyed about this moment. Let's invest in the future. And as a devout public servant, I also know the limitations of government. I want to work with...
Servant King. Or Queen.
The private sector. I have in my career the skills, the breadth, the depth of value in those active partnerships benefit us all. So part of my plan for housing is to actively partner with building developers, with home builders, to create tax credits, to increase the supply of housing in America. My estimate is I think we can actually do it by 3 million by the end of my first term. Part of my approach that is about a new generation potentially of leadership, and certainly a different approach. Most of my career was not spent in Washington, D.C. I say that with pride. In that, most of my career was spent as a prosecutor, but making decisions that had a direct impact on people's lives. I learned at a very young age as a prosecutor.
Servant king, servant queen.
That the things that I would do, the swipe of my pen could result in someone having their liberty or not. When I was Attorney General of California, which is, by estimates, the 5th largest economy in the world, I was acutely aware the words I spoke could move markets. I like getting things done. And part of my approach, which is I think about a new generation of leadership, is let's cut through the red tape. Let's cut through the bureaucracy while still knowing the virtues of the work that we can do in the public sector, be it public education, public health, public safety.
This is a perfect segue into our first audience question, which is going to come from Alexandra Miller from Delaware County, main section right there. Hi, Alexandra.
Hello. Hello, Madam Vice President and Representative.
And by the way, I gave you that intro because it gives you a sense of who she is. She's introducing herself still to a lot of the public, and she is giving that sense of, so before I was saying he's a bit of a narcissist, or very much a narcissist, here, this is her saying, I am a servant leader.
Representative Cheney, thank
Hi
you
there.
for taking my question today. My name is Alex. I have a 7-year-old son and a wonderful 72-year-old mother who is suffering from dementia and requires full-time care. Yeah. My son is in 2nd grade. My mother is in a nursing home, and I work full-time. The costs of childcare and of elder care are staggering, but simultaneously, the professionals that help care for both our children and our elders are generally underpaid, which makes it difficult for them to support their own families and do the jobs that they need to do. How do you propose to help bridge this gap, making both child and elder care more affordable for hardworking families, and also retaining and attracting quality talent for these essential jobs?
Interesting. So we've got a very detailed question that should elicit, hopefully, a detailed answer. So the question is, what does Harris do in terms of answering that question? Does she answer it in a way that is detailed, in a way that we didn't quite see from Trump? He had elements where he should have gone down that route, but then just goes off on all these wild tangents. Or does she stay on target?
So first of all, you're dealing with a lot.
Empathy. So what she's doing here is she's saying, I am empathetic. She's probably not, I don't know if she's doing that on purpose, but she is an empathetic person. And we've seen that in her answers previously at the Univision town hall, exceptionally good there when she was answering that woman who was very emotional, and then went straight over to her after the town hall event there. Here, she's showing emotion, empathy, and also then brings in her own personal experience in a way that actually Trump never does bring in personal experience. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and has forever been this sort of person. Like, he goes to a barbershop. There's actually nothing, there's no commonality between Trump and the black guys in a barbershop. The working class compared to a New York elite, there's no commonality. Whereas because Kamala Harris comes from a middle class background, she can pull on commonalities.
And I just wish you strength and support. You are a part of what we call the sandwich generation, which are those parents and children who are right in the middle. They are taking care of their young children and taking care of their parents as they age. And it's a lot. And so I actually plan to address this in a substantial way because I actually bring a personal experience to it as well. I took care of my mother when she was sick. And that work is the work of trying to cook something that they feel like eating, right? Trying to figure out which clothes will not irritate their skin and help them put on a sweater. It's about trying to figure out how you can say something that brings a smile to their face or makes them laugh.
There's no teleprompter here, remember? And she's honing in on the emotional connection here between her and that woman who is experiencing, no doubt, similar things. And she's experienced that in a way that Trump never would have experienced anything like that.
It's about dignity. Meanwhile, you have a second grader. You try and teach that kid how to read. Spending time with them, reminding them they are special and can be anything. And in the middle of all of that, if you are working, or just to have a minute to breathe, it's a lot. It's a lot. So the way that this plays out for many people is it's one of just a couple of ways. One, if you have the good fortune of having enough extra money, you can hire somebody to come in and then exactly as you said, you, knowing what you just shared with us about yourself, would pay them the value of their work. Or someone in this position would have to basically spend down all their savings so they could qualify for Medicaid, which means they pretty much have to give it everything. Or they have to quit their job, which means one less income in their household.
And I wonder whether Trump would ever be able to elucidate this kind of knowledge about what it means to live in that situation. So although she's not giving you a sense of what the policies coming in a second, but this is all about, I know your lived experience and I can understand what it means to be in this situation. I'm going to communicate to the audience that I understand what the real life choices are for people placed in this kind of situation.
And this issue for me is a matter of dignity. Yours, your parents, and the well-being of your child. And you being able to do what you naturally want to do, and the thing that we should value in our society, which is someone like you who is taking on the duty and the responsibility of all of that. So my plan is that instead of those scenarios I just mapped out, we will restructure it so that Medicare covers the cost of in-home health care for your parent so that they can be at home and you can then have the assistance with someone who can help prepare that meal, help them get dressed, and you can still give that baby of yours all the love that they deserve, and you can have sanity in the process, and everyone can have dignity. And so this is my approach, which is, let's just look at this let's just come at it from common sense, by the way. It's just common sense. And what is a common sense, practical approach to doing this? Because when you are able to be productive, we all benefit, by the way. When that child is able to have a parent who is able to help them.
And this is really important. The reason I chose this answer is not because it's packed full of policy. It's only about one simple policy. But what it does is it shows you, one, she understands the context. Two, she's got a connection to that context herself in her own lived experience. Three, policy. Four, the understanding of the abstract ideas around that policies, like the or not even the abstract, the actual like economic, cultural and social impact of that policy. This is someone who understands politics. This isn't someone that's going to sit up there and say, oh, you've got strong looking arms and blah, blah, blah. And then go off on one and talk about all sorts of stuff and then drilling oil and whatnot. This is like, here's a policy. I understand why it's needed. And here is the impact it's going to have.
By the way,
because we all benefit.
Child is able to have a parent who is able to help them with their reading and remind that child that they are special.
Educational
We're
impact,
all going to benefit from that.
which then leads on to an economic impact, so on and so forth. So, and actually, and as I said, that was one of the lesser like policyful. I mean, it was only sandwiched right in the middle of what she had to say, but it ostensibly, you know, all of these answers in this town hall were just really competent answers about like policy.
Help them get personal experience. My mother had two goals in her life: to raise her two daughters, my sister and I, and to end breast cancer. My mother was a breast cancer researcher. And she was so passionate about women's health care. And I remember it as a young girl and throughout my life. And we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that when she walks into that clinic, that doctor's office, that hospital, that she's taken seriously. And that's also about what we do in terms of training within the profession. It's also about what we do in terms of public education.
So this is answering that second part. Sorry, I forwarded it on a bit because time's getting on. But then she goes on again in answering how do we give value to these people, and she goes on and talks about the policy. But again, she's rooting it in her own lived experience. When my mother was like, and she was this, and she was. There's this lived experience that then goes into the policy, and it's this whole holistic picture of who Kamala Harris is and what she stands for.
Give information to women, so that they know that they are not just complaining and they should not suppress or subordinate, but their concerns might be about themselves because they're taking care of everybody else. So there's a lot of work to do. And of course, there's a connection between this and what we need to do since the Dobbs decision came down. When we are looking at, I've met with a lot of, in particular, OBGYNs who are concerned that there are kids going through, young people going through their medical school who are now feeling deterred from engaging in reproductive health work. And reproductive health work is vast. It is not only about abortion. It is about a whole array of care. And we want to make sure that we're not creating disincentives for people to go into that very, very important profession. And then we also want to make sure that we are in the whole issue of reproductive care, not suggesting to women or the people who love them that they should be judged.
So it's really interesting that she is always cognizant of the impact of these policies, but also there she was talking about, I've gone and done some research and we've spoken to people in a way that's informing my views on what's going on with this particular policy area. Anyway, I'm sort of rushing through that. I actually did want to play more of her answer, so I'm sorry that I've cut bits off. So, okay, we've heard a little bit of both of them in answering certain town hall questions. CNN had a town hall for Kamala Harris and both Trump, but Trump refused to turn up, so it was only Kamala Harris in the end. And she gave like a pretty decent enough response to a bunch of questions, and afterwards they had the post-match analysis, and Dana Bash was like, oh, she could have done better here, said this, I think this is an issue. And here Jake Tapper is actually on point, but saying essentially we're grading Trump on a curve. There's double standards being attributed here to both candidates, both nominees, because he gets to say all this nuts stuff about like Hitler and about Hitler and these fascistic things, and then talking about the enemy within, and then people that work with him called him a fascist and unstable, and he gets to say all these bonkers things and can't finish sentences and says all this incoherent nonsense, and he's not critiqued for that in the same way that Harris is critiqued as a regular politician, saying things like, I think you could have done a little bit better with that, and he gets to go off on one and talk about absolute nonsense, and everyone's like, that's Trump. And Jake Tapper is absolutely right, and I think he's sort of, in a sense, he is implicitly criticizing Dana Bash for that double standard approach.
It strikes me what's interesting about the moment we're in right now is that we in the media are treating Vice President Harris like we treat a normal politician, and we're critiquing her answers, and we're talking about, well, she could have said this differently, she could have said that differently. Meanwhile, the Republican nominee literally is talking about liberals being the enemy within, talking about using the military to go after these people. His defenders say, oh no, he's talking about going after illegal immigrants, or he's going after mobs in the street. And Trump will say, no, no, no. I mean, going after the Pelosi's, going after Adam Schiff, going after Democrats. And these campaigns are in two different universes.
Yep. Absolutely. These campaigns are in two separate universes. It's just, and Van Jones absolutely nails it. And he's angry here. I absolutely get this. Like, this is spot on.
Look, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not taking the same exam.
Yeah.
And I think it bothers people. They're not taking the same exam. He gets to be lawless. She has to be flawless. That's what's unfair.
Well,
That's what's
good.
unfair. That's what's unfair tonight. That's what's unfair tonight. They're not taking the same exam. Look, she has policies. She may not articulate them perfectly every time. She may not put the stories in the right places, but she's fighting for actual ideas that will help real people. And he's talking about people's penises. And so they are not taking the same exam, and that's pissing people off. It's pissing me off.
Well, and I'm also
It's
old
making
enough
you
to
angry,
remember
but-
that if your fiscal plans were actually said to bankrupt the Social Security Trust Fund in sooner years, Donald Trump's, that would be a campaign-destroying issue. But we just gloss over things with Donald Trump.
Look.
And that's a really good point, because there's just another analysis that is basically showing that Trump's plans will bankrupt the US. Absolutely. And here's another guy saying it, taking it to Fox News. Exactly the same point here.
Number two, I know you're not talking about somebody being lucid and cogent and enunciating their thoughts with clarity, and you're bragging about Donald Trump. We can't be watching the same stuff if that's what you're doing. You ain't going to do that today.
You know
now,
what?
Lindsey Graham, hold it. Now, Senator Lindsey
I'm
Graham
gonna do
is
it
about
today.
to come on this show.
Let me tell you
now,
something.
that man can
I
articulate
have
himself
sat
very
with
well.
him.
Not Donald Trump now.
I have sat with him for hour after hour after hour, topic after topic after topic, and he is so dialed in.
Really?
Look, you know, it's funny. People try. This is like
Ain't he
the latest
canceling press
argument.
conferences?
Meanwhile, you're.
Number two, I know you're not talking about somebody being lucid and cold.
Absolutely. And he's cancelling press conferences because he's so lucid, he's so on point. Absolutely on the money there. And at that town hall at CNN, I mean, this is kind of the whole point of this is, right, after you get these town halls, like, has a swing voter changed their mind at all? Undecided Pennsylvania voter, Kamala Harris's response really resonated with me.
Is when I believe it was you that asked the weakness question. You know, what is your biggest weakness? And she brought up that she has people around her that she can trust, that she can get the answer from. In my line of work in IT, I don't expect everybody to know the answer. I expect them to know how to get the answer. And her specifically, that resonated with me, because I don't need a president that knows everything or thinks they know everything, because that's not what America needs. They need to put the right people in the right place to lead the country efficiently. One person can't lead this country. They need a team. And that's what resonated with me.
That's a really, really good point. It is. And when you see things like this with regard to, say, tariffs, we've talked about this before, but Trump doesn't understand tariffs, but claims he does. And I did a whole segment of a video explaining how tariffs work, and that they are functionally a sales tax. When you put a tariff on a good coming into your country, it's the importer that pays. It's not the country that they're coming from that pays. Your own consumer pays higher prices, or your importer takes a cut in their profits that they make. Or if you're importing a component to manufacture a piece with that tariff increased cost component, then you have to sink that cost in your profits, or you put the price up, which means the consumer pays, or your own corporations make less profit. So therefore that tax is coming out of that corporation's profit or that consumer's pay packet as they're paying for the good with an increased price. So that's how tariffs work. And to have Donald Trump come on and say, I'm not proposing a national sales tax, as the Democrats say in their advertisements against me. Dems know what they're saying is a blatant lie. It's not. I am proposing tariffs on other countries that take advantage of us. Hardly a national sales tax. Those tariffs are paid for by the abusing country. They are not. You don't understand this. Like, you're not an expert here, and you're not even relying on experts to come and speak for you as surrogates. You're just showing your absolute ignorance here. Not the American consumer. They do not cause inflation. Yes, they do, and will make America rich again. No, they won't. Anyway, my larger point has been that when you look at these two people running for president, one knows what they're talking about, has lived experience that can connect them to the electorate far more, I think, reasonably, and has an understanding of what their policies might do in terms of how they impact the wider society, economically, in terms of education, whatever, socially. And you have someone who's just flitting around, who's a narcissist that's only interested in self-aggrandizing and making things better for himself, not really for that population. There's certainly no empathy there. In fact, all he can do is look at images of himself in these different places and marvel at it. This is not a servant king. This is someone who is in it for himself, and is also suffering with cognitive decline and doesn't have the requisite knowledge about different policy areas to be able to string together coherent answers. Anyway, that's my tuppence. Sorry I banged on for so long, but hopefully the point was cogent itself in the end. Take care. Speak to you soon.